Hey guys, what's going on? This is RJ Game News USA here, and today we're gonna go over Superman reviews. Now, guys, Superman, it's a big title. It just came out, or will be coming out this weekend. The reviews are already out. Rotten Tomatoes gave it pretty high marks, but we do Metacritic around here now because instead of just saying whether or not the movie's good or not, we actually get more in-depth to actually having an aggregate score on said movie. That being said, they are a lot harsher on movies than they are games. So Metacritic scores will be lower on movies than games typically. Just in general across the board, movie critics are just more assholes than gaming critics who are just suck-ups. That's just kind of how that goes. So if you like this kind of content, please like, share, and subscribe if you hadn't already. And before we get to the reviews, let me talk about my thoughts on the new Superman movie and why I chose to not watch it. So, to me, the trailers did not really spark my interest. I really don't care all that much about the Superman character because he lacks a second dimension to him. I don't know how gritty you can make Superman or how goofy you can make Superman. This new movie looked like it was a little more on the goofy side, which I really wasn't into. I really wasn't into Man of Steel either. Honestly, the best Superman movies are still the ones from the 80s and shit, in my opinion, although they're a little corny and hokey. And my best experience with Superman was the Superman animated series, which is still far inferior to both the Spider-Man animated series and the Batman animated series, also from the 90s. And I don't even want to start on Superman 64. That game is one of the worst games of all time. So with that being said, let's go over some of these reviews. It got a 69 overall on Metacritic. So we got 33 positive reviews, 17 mixed, and 1 negative. And let's just run down the list, shall we? By the way, probably a mistake to wear the mask because it's so fucking hot. Screen Rant gave it a 90, saying James Gunn's Superman movie launches the DC Universe in spectacular fashion with a fun-filled romp that requires refreshingly little homework. Well, that's good that it's just it's fun. They keep it simple. Maybe this movie is turning out better than I thought it would. New York Times with a 90. Has both a story in its own and a prequel to a whole bunch of others. This movie must introduce us to a variety of characters we'll meet later, and it does without feeling too much like fan service or exposition. We're going to skip around. I'm not going to give every single review. Looper also gave it a 90, saying, has an introduction to the rebooted DC Universe. Superman is a zippy blockbuster fun, but amidst all of its cartoon absurdity, it might just inspire people to make a difference in the universe. USA Today with an 88, saying the movie features pervasive positivity, one really cool K9, and a bright comic book aesthetic. And while this fresh superhero landscape is extremely busy and a little bit familiar, it also feels lived in and electric. So see, people are liking this so far. Consequence with an 83, saying grim and gritty are words this movie firmly rejects, instead leaning into the human side of everyone involved, even its villains. There are a few choices that work less than others, but the end result is a movie that doesn't sacrifice its titular character in service to franchise tropes. So a couple things. I'm not a fan of what they did with changing his slogan. When they said now he's like justice, truth, and the human way instead of the American way. I have a big problem with that. Like, I understand they want to make Superman global, but this is the kind of, like, the kind of shit they do that twist and turn things around. Like, there's a little bit of wokeism going on in this movie. A little bit of, like, female empowerment raw or here, you know, with Lois Lane and stuff. My understanding is, like I said, haven't seen it, don't really plan to. But sounds like there's a little bit of wokeness here. There's a little bit of moderntivity. And I just don't... Again, F1 just came out recently, and it really didn't have any of that crap in there, and it did great. You don't need to wokeify the movie even a little bit. You really don't. Superman is supposed to be... You know, he is nice, obviously, in this movie. And they do hit the tone right, I think, when it comes to that kind of stuff. But I do think that some of the wokeness, some of the, oh, he's worried about social media bullshit is so infuriating. It just takes you out of it totally. Sorry to be a negative Nancy on that, but it just is what it is. The Independent with an 8. And how about the IGN with an 80? Superman is a wonderfully entertaining, heartfelt cinematic. Reset for the Man of Steel, and a great new start for the DC Universe on the big screen. Gee whiz, IGN, could you have come out with a more cookie-cutter review than that? Hollywood Reporter with an 80. What matters most is the movie is fun, pacey, and enjoyable. A breath of fresh air, sweetened by a deep affection for the material, and boosted by a winning trio of leads. I'm a little skeptical on Lex Luthor. As much as I kind of sort of bashed Lois Lane a little, and I think I bashed the Superman just a touch with the worrying about social media posts. I think the Lex Luthor is downright fucking goofball-y. Too goofball-y for my taste. The Independent with an 80, saying that David Corenswet, Rachel Brosnan, and Nicholas Hoult lead a movie that just doesn't serve as a referendum for superhero films, but for the cinematic future of DC as a whole. Yeah, Marvel takes itself very seriously a lot. If DC can sort of capture the more family-friendly, the more open-ended, comedic style, that would probably be helpful for them. That would probably be helpful. Variety with an 80, saying this new movie isn't dark. Zack Snyder's ambitious mistake. So much has it's a loopy, spinning, multifaceted story with genuine emotional stakes. That's why it treats Superman's powers as the most spectacular and least interesting about him. That's interesting. I wonder if I would get that vibe. The Associated Press with a 75. Not everything works in Superman. For those who like their Superman classically drawn, Gunn's film will probably seem too irreverent and messy. But for anyone who found Zack Snyder's previous administration painfully ponderous, this Superman at least has a pulse. Man, that's going to spark big time fucking debate between this Superman by James Gunn, or do you prefer the Man of Steel by Zack Snyder? Totally different takes on the character. Again, count me out of that fight. Give me the 1980s Superman. This is probably closer to that. Polygon with a 74. James Gunn's real superpower is in his ability to wear this comic book nonsense lightly, to take it seriously within the world of this movie without feeling like he's assigning homework. We have Screen Daily with a 70. Although overstuffed and uneven, at its best, Gunn's Superman combines the most admirable attributes of both character and director, resulting in an ambitious, occasionally stirring film that is weirder, nervier, and more thoughtful than most blockbusters. You know, that sounded like a really awesome review, but they ended up only giving that a 70. Sounded like that would actually score higher based on what the words they were saying. Entertainment Weekly with a 67. With a cast this excellent, there's a capacity for something truly super in the future film, if only Gunn chooses to put the characters' humanities first. And then RogerEbert.com with a 63. We're left with a mid-level take on Superman that at times will remind you of the 1978 version, but doesn't quite match it for pure pop entertainment value. Yeah, sounds about right. Washington Post with a 63. To his credit, Gunn pushes a much-needed reset button in Superman, banishing shadows and pretentious self-seriousness in favor of bright palette, brisk storytelling, and occasional jolts of bracing humor. I kind of think I would like this more than Man of Steel. I thought maybe I wouldn't, but I don't know. BBC with a 60. The first in DC's new cinematic universe, starring David Cornsweet, is glib and flimsy. Comic fans will love it, but this curio feels like an eccentric sci-fi B-movie. Wow. Yeah, we're in the mixed reviews now, people. We're in the yellow here. Paste Magazine with a 60. It's a kids movie with some adult moments and lots of nerdy references, along with new interpretations of familiar characters, just as you would expect. Wow, I think labeling this as strictly a kids movie is really fucking downplaying what it tried to do. I do. I think that's a little insulting. I think adults could like this movie pretty easily. The Los Angeles Times with a 60. This isn't quite the heat-soaring Superman I wanted, but these adventures wise him up enough that I'm curious to explore where the saga takes him next. Alright. IndieWire with a 58. For the movie that's meant to represent the birth of a brand new cinematic universe, the DCU, James Gunn's slight and slap-happy take on Superman doesn't feel like much of a start of anything. Yeah, that is interesting. A lot of people are saying it feels like a self-contained movie, not really the start of the DC universe. I know they really want to have their DCU like Marvel has the MCU, but I don't... based on what I'm seeing and hearing, it doesn't look like it. The Daily Beast with a 55. A would-be franchise restarter that resembles a Saturday morning cartoon come to overstuffed helter-skelter life. Yeah, I don't... Would this have been better as a TV show? I'm starting to think that this would just be flat better as a TV show. By the way, on Metacritic, just letting you know, they're mixed reviews that give more leeway before you hit negative. I don't know. It's pretty crazy. San Francisco Chronicle to 50. Superman is a mess, but it's a colorful one. It's either a terrible superhero movie or an okay parody. Take your pick. Oh, God. Yeah, I was worried to an extent that this would almost feel like a fucking parody. And someone just basically acknowledged it might be. The Globe and Mail Toronto with a 50. The problem is, while alluding to the depressing state of things, the gleeful fun Gunn insists on having with its kinshy aesthetic and silly humor can feel forced. So yeah, so in other words, they're showing a world that's broken, but they're having too much fun, is what the Globe and Mail Toronto is saying. The Playlist with a 42. Superman may leap tall buildings and succeed on most of Gunn's terms, divergent from Marvel and old DC, inversely punk rock and overloaded with bright, colorful hopefulness, but it won't really soar like a bird or a plane for anyone who demands symbolic gestures. The Guardian, we don't really like them on this channel, but they gave it a 40, saying from the very beginning this new Superman is encumbered by pointless and cluttered new backstory, which has to be explained in many whirlsome intertiles flashed up on screen before anything happens at all. They did not like this movie. The Times with the 40. There are glimmers of intrigue as well as quirks and curious. Alright. Stupid review. Wall Street Journal with a 40. Superman can be a myth, a god, an American emblem, or a symbol of the overachieving immigrant. But making him a schmo who's so weak he'd be in deep trouble if it weren't for his ridiculous dog feels like a dizzyingly dismissive choice. Yeah, I did hear a little bit about this Superman being a little helpless, too much helpless at times, not powerful enough. That's not what Superman's about at all. And finally, we have our one lone completely negative review of a 38 by Larson on Film, saying, by the movie's merciful end, you wonder what a nice guy like Superman is doing in a mean place like this. And that'll wrap it up, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Are you going to go see the new Superman movie? Let me know. Hit that like button. Share this video out there. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace. I'm out. Have a good one.